Hello, thanks for stopping by and checking out my Spirit Island organizer. I'm going to start off by showing you how the entire system works in one box and taking everything out, putting it back in. Then I'm going to show you how it can easily be converted to a two-box organizer using the Nature Incarnate box. Just in one box, this is capable of holding everything except for the extra power cards and board from the Horizons game. But in the two-box organizer, there is enough room to include that stuff as well, so you can have all of the Spirit Island content in one very condensed package. Like I said, starting off, we're going to take apart the one-box version of the organizer. Underneath the rule books, we can see kind of the top layer of what's inside of here. This has the presences, all 9 colors. I do like to keep the extra invader board. I don't use it very often, but it's nice to have around sometimes. And underneath that, we have the standard invader board and a stack of all of these scenarios and adversaries. And then rounding off the top, we have one tray containing all of the spirit tokens, the general spirit tokens, and then an energy tray to go along with it. Underneath that, we kind of get to the middle layer. This has all of the cards, all of which are sleeved except for the helper cards, because I find nobody ever uses those, as well as the Invaders, Blight, and Dahan, and then a stack of all of the spirit panels. I found it's easiest to start by removing these trays here, at least one of them, and then that lets you easily start getting to the cards. We have individual card holders for everything. That one was the events. This one has all of the aspects in it, as well as the progression decks for playing with the low complexity spirits. A separate holder for all of the minor powers, one for the fear cards, one for blight cards. This is the helpers one. These are the only cards that are not sleeved because, again, I find that they never really get used, so those sleeves aren't necessary. The minor power deck, and then an entire stack of all of the uniques. This includes the healing cards for Wounded Waters. Those are also in here as well. And then this holder, which has the Invader deck, and underneath those there are also all of the reminders for various things. And then inside of this holder as well are the dividers for the fear levels, the England High Immigration tile, the Endless Dark tile, and the baggie of all of the reminders. This is the only baggie in the entire organizer, and as much as I would have liked to get rid of it as well, it just didn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense to make this part a lot more complicated when just simply keeping everything in the bag, sliding them in the back like that tends to work pretty well. And then, like I said, we have as well the entire stack of all spirit panels. This is every single spirit panel. The Horizons ones are in the thin cardstock form, not the very thick ones. This system would work if they were the thicker ones, but I'm sure that it would need maybe a tiny bit of adjusting. And then you can see the bottom layer of the organizer. This is the 6 island boards surrounded by various tokens. When I made this, I tried to keep in mind which things you're going to need to pull out every game and which things you can leave in the box. For example, all of this stuff over here is something that you're going to have to handle every time you play. But unless you're playing with one of the spirits that uses the specific tokens, the Incarna, or even the elements, I find you're not going to need to pull those out, so I wanted to just leave them in the box. Same thing with the scenario tokens. Also, unless you're playing against, or unless you happen to run across the Blight card that causes you to add extra fear tokens, the Still Healthy card, once you pull the fear out, you shouldn't need to go back to this pile as well. I would say the reminders are the only thing that maybe you want to grab some more of in the middle of the game. There are a couple holes here, which are for getting out the islands easily, so you don't have to remove any of the trays. And that also gets you a good starting point for grabbing something if you would want it. But that's the bottom level of this. And then to restack it, we just undo everything that we did first. I find it helps to put down the one row of the cards. It is a little bit important if you're using everything in one box to keep this part, which again has the invader deck, the fear levels, and the reminders all the way on the left side. And then what I typically do is I will put down one spirit panel and make sure that all of the tokens underneath it are sitting flush and underneath that panel, and then I add the rest of them on top. From there, we just simply keep adding in all of the parts that we can. The nice thing about this is there really isn't any particular order for the rest of the cards. I find these ones do fit best if you keep them in a stack of 4, but obviously they can go in there in any order or direction that you want. Same thing as well before, making sure that this is sitting all the way on the bottom is important. You don't want it to catch a spirit panel and be askew or something like that. And then again, these just drop in. The spacing width-wise here is a little bit tight. You can see my box is bowing a tiny bit. I've never found it to be a problem. I used the same spacing on my previous organizer and everything worked out great. And then from there we get to the top level, and again, everything's just going back as it was before. This is why the fear levels need to be all the way on the left, is to make room for the energy, and they also fit well around the adversaries and scenarios. The invader board is a little bit taller, and you can see that that little bit of room there might not necessarily work well. And then lastly, the presences go down rule books if you choose to keep those in your boxes, and then the lid can go pretty easily on top. I'm not going to be able to show you the lid lift in this video, but I will include links to pictures below so you can see. It's a hair less than 1.5 inches of lid lift with this. I think it's about 1 3/8 inches. And I don't remember the total height of the box off the top of my head. But if you would rather keep it in a 2-box organizer with no lid lift, that's also possible. Like I said again, with the Nature Incarnate box. And this happens to work out well because the Nature Incarnate box is the same size, length and width as the base game and Jagged Earth box. I actually expected it to be the same size as the Horizons box, which is a little bit smaller, and if that were the case, this wouldn't work. Luckily though, it is the case, and this does work. So what we're gonna have to do is get down to the bottom layer, and we're going to move everything on the top and everything on the bottom into the Nature Incarnate box. That does mean we have to get everything else out of the way so we can move over the entire bottom layer, but that's normally not too bad of a process to do. Thankfully, everything comes out pretty easily. There is clearance designed all the way around the organizer, so with a little bit of careful planning, it's pretty easy to just go around and grab the individual parts that you need. Some of them do come out a little bit easier than others as the first piece to take out, but you can start pretty much anywhere and it'll work out just fine. Now that we're down to the bottom layer of this, we're going to transfer all of this over to here. I think it's easiest to just grab the entire stack of island boards and then start building in around them. One thing to note, this is true regardless of how you're setting up the organizer, is that with premium tokens, the fear and the reminders need to sit flush and they can't stack too high. If you have 4 fear tokens stacked high, they're going to stick up past the level of the island boards, and then they're not going to work well anymore. This does also only include one of these scenario token piles. I personally don't play with scenarios, so it wasn't a high priority for me to make sure that I could include both sets of scenarios, but that is something that could be adjusted. Maybe keep them in a baggie on top if you would like to do that. This organizer also does fit all premium and regular tokens. I have checked. The only one that's a little bit tight is there are a lot of cardboard beast tokens, but the premium ones fit just fine. Also say hello to my cat. His name is Barley, and he is a good boy. So with that being done then, like I said, we've moved the bottom layer over here. We can repack this box, but first I'm actually just going to refill in this one. Unfortunately, that means I'm going to have to kick my friend out of his comfortable new home here. And again, everything just goes back together the same way. Luckily for this one, since we're not planning around the stack of fear levels, we don't actually need to worry as much about how everything in here is laid out, you do get a little bit of freedom back with that. You are also going to end up with a little bit of extra room in here. That's how we're going to be able to fit the Horizons decks, the extra decks, and the Horizons board as well. This is already full. This is done. So if I'm going to put the Horizons content in here, I like to put down one single rulebook. Excuse me. I like to put down one rulebook just to kind of hold everything else down. And then this corner with the Invader stuff is actually a little bit lower than the parts of the organizer. So I put the minor cards in there where it's just a little bit sunken. And then the board on top of that, excuse me. Thank you for giving me my box back. And then the lid can go on top of there. And this does close flush. So there's no lid lift now in the Nature Incarnate box. And then we're just going to repack everything over here as it was before. Again, nothing new. We've essentially just moved the top and bottom of the organizer from one box to another. Making sure that the spirit panels are all properly out of the way. This can go there. And then dropping in the cards. We could put the other rule books in there, but I'm just going to put them in here because this is where I happen to have them. And now the entire organizer, including the Horizons map and extra decks, are in 2 boxes with no lid lift. A couple things to note about this, if you are planning on printing this for yourself, there are 1 or 2 nuances that do make a difference. Especially, I'm assuming if you're printing this, you're planning on doing it with sleeved cards. The size of the clear sleeves that you would use on your Spirit unique cards is very important. Everything that is in a colored sleeve is in a matte DragonShield, and those are a hair wider than normal clear sleeved cards. So you have to make sure that the sleeves that you're using on your uniques are 91 or 92 millimeters. I can't remember. Check some info down below, and I will make sure that there's a link to something there. This was designed around the sleeves that I had at the time, so I can't even guarantee that other clear sleeves will necessarily work if they're a little bit thicker. There's over 100 cards. There's something like 150 cards in this. So, you know, an extra 1/10 of a millimeter per card does add up, and they might not all fit very well inside of this. So again, I'll leave you a link to the sleeves that I know work down at the bottom, but otherwise, if you're willing to gamble on trying your own, you're more than welcome to do that. That's it. That's all I got. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down below. I am not a YouTuber, so I don't really check comments on my videos very often, so it might take me some time to get back to you. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or would like any updates or information. There will be a link to Thingiverse down below where you can download all the files as well. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.